I'm going to go down myself and I'm going to live stream my experience at the protest. This was the Monday after the protest started, and I show up, and it was unlike, it was in no way like what they were saying it was on the news. It was so disproportionate, over the top, excessive of a response, other than the fact that this protest had gone on for 3 weeks, had become international news and international inspiration, and it had to be suppressed.
So I'm with Viva Frei, donc hi Viva Frei. I want to be with you today because you were on the ground in the Freedom Convoy and you did interview a lot of people. You saw what it was going on there. I want to see your point of view of what you see.
So I'm sitting at home. Actually, I was out of town the weekend that this started happening. People were like, Viva, you got to get to Ottawa. And then all I know is I'm seeing what I'm seeing on the news, that it's a extremist protest. There were Nazi flags, there were Confederate flags, xenophobic, yada yada. But I know people on the ground, and journalists at Rebel News, and they think it's not what's going on here. And I said, there's only one way to find out what's going on. I'm going to go down myself and I'm going to live stream my experience at the protest. This was the Monday after the protest started, and I show up, and it was unlike. It was in no way like what they were saying it was on the news. And I just ran with my camera for, I think it was 4.5 hours the first day, just talking to people, asking them what their experience had been like. And it turns out it was just outright remorseless lies coming from the mainstream media as to what was actually going on in Ottawa. And I said, I'm just going to keep coming back day in and day out as often as I can to document in real time so people can see in real time. And they can't accuse me of editing, selective, whatever. They're going to see what's going on, and they're going to share in the experience with me. But what I saw was the most peaceful, patriotic, Canadians loving Canada protest ever.
And what about the 2 day of the police breakthrough? Do you think that, first of all, what the police and the RCMP and all the unit did was justified and legal?
Okay, so I live streamed for I think it was 12 days over 3 weeks. It was nothing but peaceful protest. And I mean, without qualification, at one point I was asking the cops, had you seen violence? Had you seen vandalism? And one cop said at one point, actually, yeah, there was a broken window over there. And wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He said, by the way, it wasn't even the protesters that did it. For the 12 days that I was live streaming, I did not see one iota of violence until the cops showed up the Friday before the Saturday when all the proverbial poo-poo hit the fan. This was the Friday after the Monday that Trudeau had invoked the Emergencies Act to declare a national emergency that was so beyond the scale of anything the provinces had the resources to handle that he had to call in his own resources. Came in, there were Sûreté de Québec, there were RCMP, OPP, Sudbury Police. There was another one I'm missing. Doesn't matter. Everyone. And he said, I'm not bringing in the military. But I saw armored police. I saw snipers on roofs. There was a police treating this protest like it was, what people think January 6th was in the United States and in Washington. It was so disproportionate, over the top, excessive of a response, other than the fact that this protest had gone on for 3 weeks, had become international news and international inspiration, and it had to be suppressed at all costs. Whether or not it was legal to invoke the Emergencies Act, it's the first time the act had ever been invoked. Whether or not it rose to the level of a national emergency, not in any realm of reality in my mind, but I'm not in Justin Trudeau's mind. But then when they came in, it was just everything changed, mood changed, ambiance changed, and that was the first time I saw violence. These police officers like stormtroopers in lines with batons and barricades, just pushing protesters, pushing them, waiting for a reaction. Anybody who fell down, they took them, arrested them. I didn't see a lick of violence until the police showed up, and then it just went from bad on Friday to worse on Saturday.
In a really short time, Mr. Trudeau have invoked the Emergencies Act, but after the vote, he dropped it less than 48 hours. He needed that for justify the treatment that the police did to the citizen and the protester.
So this is uncharted territory for a lot of people, including lawyers. First time the act has ever been invoked. I didn't study the Emergencies Act, so I knew what I don't know. I was listening to a lot of other smarter people, explain what they thought of the law. Look, the procedure was you declare the national emergency, you invoke the Emergencies Act, you have to, the House of Commons and the Senate has to vote on the directives that are going to be implemented in virtue of the declaration. They had 7 sitting days from the initial declaration to do it. But, I mean, look, everybody knows, the Friday after the Monday when Justin invoked the Emergencies Act, they suspended the debate, ostensibly because it was so dangerous they couldn't carry out the debate. But in the meantime, they're carrying out the directives. They're bringing in the police. They're fencing things off. They're arresting people and breaking it up, even though it has not even been voted on, not by the House of Commons and not by the Senate. They delayed the vote. They implement it while it's awaiting ratification. Then the House of Commons debates for 2 days, votes yay. NDP and Liberals approved it, and they got embarrassed and they got made fools of by Justin, but that's on them. And then before the Senate could vote on it, I suspect Trudeau thought he was going to lose in the Senate. He rescinded it. So in the meantime, he had a week of carrying out the directives under this invocation of the Emergencies Act that were never ratified or rejected by the Senate, and then he rescinded it and said, okay, well, I did what I had to do anyhow. Whether it or not it was legal, I don't know, actually. I do ask questions as to whether or not the banks that seized or froze bank accounts under this directive and under the promise of immunity, I do wonder if they actually benefited legally from any immunity, because it was never ratified. It was never rejected, it was just rescinded. So whether or not it makes it all questionable, I don't know. We'll see if it ever gets adjudicated before the courts, but it's a mechanism exploited to the full political potential. And, what a way to violently suppress what had been nothing but 3 weeks of the most peaceful, patriotic, and inspiring protest I have ever seen.
And now you have a lawsuit of 306 million against not only the organizer, but as well some random license plate that have been taken in picture of people who were present that day, and truck driver as well. What is your thought about that lawsuit?
Yeah, so I got familiar with that because that was one of the lawsuits that got the original injunction to the cessation of the honking. So that was the injunction that enjoined the protesters from honking their horns, but my understanding is by the time that had become an issue, they were basically not honking at night anyhow. From what I understand, it's a class action lawsuit. Yeah, I think it's 306 or 300. It's over $300 million in damages. And the bases of the damages are, they're alleging tinnitus from some of the people who were enduring the honking, interference with their peaceful enjoyment of property. They went after the organizers. They went after, from what I understand, anybody who parked their car on Wellington. And when I was there streaming this Saturday, and I noticed this policewoman taking pictures of all the license plates as they were leaving. And I was like, it's obvious why she's doing it, but it was so obvious. Like, she was making it visible to everyone leaving, taking a picture, going. My understanding is that they're going after anyone who parked their car on Wellington as part of this lawsuit. And my understanding also is of the 200 accounts that were frozen by the banks following Trudeau's directive. Those were all the truck drivers or pickups or regular cars who parked on Wellington for the protest. What do I think of the lawsuit? Can't stop someone from suing. What are their actual damages? We'll see. It's an interesting claim that they're saying it's interruption of business and lost revenues and all this stuff, when the only reason they shut down their businesses was because the government told them to do it, not because there was any actual real damage. We saw Iconic Cafe stayed open, did good business. The Subway on Eglinton stayed open. They did decent business. So, there's always the issue of mitigating damages in civil law, but it's an interesting lawsuit. It's going to be a hassle for all of the defendants. We'll see if the court certifies the class. But it'll probably move forward because there's enough facts on its face to say, okay, yeah, they interrupted people's lives for 3 weeks. Now it'll be a question of damages and an actual causal link.
What is your thought when you saw that Tamara Lich had been denied to bail out? As a lawyer, what was your thought?
It was outrageous. I mean, it's outrageous, categorically, full stop outrageous. You had the individual in Winnipeg who used his car to run over 4 protesters, was granted bail. I was talking with criminal lawyers. I don't practice criminal law, but I know a bunch. They said they'd never seen such onerous bail conditions imposed on drug dealers, accused murderers. But Tamara Lich and Pat King, accused of mischief-related charges, detained indefinitely. Pat King is still in jail because they don't want to release him because his officer of the peace said it would impugn the judicial system to release him. Whereas I think it's the exact opposite. These are non-violent crimes, may have been a nuisance, but pre-trial detention of someone accused of mischief and inciting mischief, in my mind, it's nothing shy of political prisoners in Canada. You know, we like to have Justin Trudeau calling Putin an authoritarian tyrant, locking up journalists. Well, there's an old expression called confession through projection, and you got Justin Trudeau locking up political dissidents as political prisoners, mischief charges. Tamara Lich spent 2.5 weeks in jail. Pat King is still in jail. And Tamara Lich's bail release on her rehearing, even though she's got her freedom, she's still effectively a prisoner. She had to post $5,000 bond herself. Her certee had to guarantee $20,000. She's banned from social media. She can't make public statements. She can't attend protest across Canada. She, as her terms of release, has had her constitutional rights violated by the terms of release. And we want to have Justin Trudeau lecture us about authoritarians in foreign countries.
We permit the bank account to investigate on individual that use or was involved in donation, or anybody who was involved in Ottawa, to do an investigation and to froze the bank account. This is legal in Canada, to froze bank account to someone who donate to a Freedom Convoy, as the woman that gave $50.
I saw that tweet from the Conservative politician, and then he said, I don't want to give any more details because I don't want people harassing her. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying, from what I understand, nobody's bank account was frozen strictly and specifically because they made a donation only. So the 206 bank accounts that were frozen were people who parked their cars on Wellington and organizers. Not that it makes it any different or better, just, to be totally accurate. Do I think it's legal? I mean, the banks did it on the promise of immunity from Justin Trudeau for freezing, in the absence of a court order, in the absence of any actual criminal charges, unilaterally freezing bank accounts at the direction of the government, and they promised immunity. I absolutely do not think it's legal. I would love for some of the affected individuals, it would be interesting to see some of the affected individuals sue, to see if the banks actually benefited from any immunity, especially given the fact that the directives were never ratified. So their promised immunity was never formalized, in my view. But whether or not it was legal, I don't think it was. I think it's absolutely over the top, unjustifiable, and it compromised people's faith in fundamental institutions, which I think is the bigger issue. Legal or not, it has turned Canada into an international laughingstock, and it has compromised both from the citizens and from foreigners any faith that people had in a law-abiding, rule-of-law country. When the banks, at the direction of the government, in the absence of a court order, with alleged immunity, can just freeze bank accounts because, Supreme Leader Trudeau says, I don't like this person, freeze their bank accounts. We're no longer living in a country that operates by the rule of law. We are living in something of a banana republic where the government can, they don't have to shoot political dissidents. They can just starve them to death. They can just ruin their lives. And purported with immunity to the institutions doing it. So I don't think it was legal, but one thing I do know is it has compromised people's faith in the most fundamental core institutions of any free and democratic society, and it's going to take years to heal from that.
I will just finish by, what will happen with Viva Frei for the next few weeks and months?
Well, people who just discovered me through this convoy, I've been around the interwebs for a long time. I think the format of this type of, call it journalism or documentation, live streaming, longer format, it's more, I won't say more honest, it's just less susceptible of manipulation, for good or for bad. And I think people, it's a funny thing, I think people now are no longer just give me the headlines. Now I want longer format, I want to understand what's going on. So before, I've been doing this thing on YouTube for a long time, but this format of just, live stream, interviews, give people the chance to speak, because a lot of people out there want to hear. I think it's going to be the new type of, the new way of dealing with these things. And I'm going to, apply it mutatis mutandis to whatever the current events are, longer format, interviews, and I'm going to keep doing it. I mean, this has been an eye-opening learning experience. And above all else, it's like it's nice to talk to people, and it's nice to listen to people, and it's nice to give people a platform so that other people can listen. There's a doggy, and come to their own conclusions at the end of the day. You know, people don't need to be told what to think. They just need to be given the information and allowed to think for themselves.
As you know, during the 2 days of dismantle of the Freedom Convoy, a lot of people have been injured, as me. And if you want to help me out with my lawyer to sue for what they did to me, you can do it to standwithalexa.ca. You can donate generously. Thank you so much.